So instead of thinking of it as something that's happening to you, think of it as being in the fucking gym, dude. Like, yeah, it's sore right now. Tomorrow I'm going to be, 1% stronger. So why are you bitching about it?
Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We got a special guest today, Tony Arterburn. Arterburn, did I say that right? God damn.
You nailed it.
I don't know if that's right or not. All I know about you, all I care about you is that you're a paratrooper. So before we get into the stuff we're actually going to talk about, let's talk about you a bit. Where'd you grow up?
Rockwall, Texas, just east of Dallas.
Okay. I don't know much about that area. How east? Like where people start speaking Cajun east, or like not that far?
No, like 30 minutes.
Oh, okay. So not the swamp. Actually, doesn't Mike Ritland live in that area? I think he does. Anyways, yeah, so not the swamp. Okay. Because I was going to say I can understand every word you're saying so far, which is not what I usually hear from East Texas. I mean, it's like you start to see a lot of
it's taken years.
And shit.
This has taken years of broadcasting to refine it, because I'm from East Texas. I mean, Rockwall is where I claim, because that's where I went to high school. But yeah, I go further east in some of the land that you're referring to. So I know it well.
It's a good place to find meth or hide a body out there.
Sure.
Either one of those things.
Highest quality.
Yeah. So you grew up in or around Rockwell. What'd you do when you were in high school? Did you play sports and shit? What was it like there?
Well, I did. I competed in powerlifting. I started
cool.
at an early age. I was the Texas state champion, national champion. I went on to set world records. I competed for the military and represented the United States eventually, actually, in powerlifting. So I was real lucky. Had a good time there in Rockwall, Texas, in the gym.
Yeah, that's cool shit. I don't know many dudes that were doing powerlifting as a sport in high school. Texas is kind of a football
rare
state,
Yes, it is.
If you're a big boy, they want you playing football here.
Yeah, it was kind of a twist of fate. I was a real strong kid. I mean, I trained really early. I mean, I could bench press 300 pounds when I was in 8th grade. I trained from a young age. And so I think I just grew a little fast. I was strong. And I tore my ACL going into my sophomore year. And after I had surgery and did all the rehab and everything, I just decided to stick with powerlifting. I kind of just carved out a niche for myself. And it was a long road because nobody had ever done that. It was always like a kind of a sideshow, but ended up doing that in the last couple of years of high school instead of going into football.
What about after high school? What'd you do?
I joined the military right after high school. Went into the U.S. Army, Paratrooper, Airborne, military policeman, and then got in my 3 foreign wars.
Where did you go? Where is basic for that?
Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
For
basic
MPs?
For MPs. Yeah.
Okay. And then you went to Benning, I would imagine, for airborne school.
Yeah. Went to Benning. Had to fight really hard to get that slot. They didn't want to give it to me.
Yeah, well, frankly, there's not a whole lot of use for a paratrooper MP, right? What the hell is it? What do you do?
Well, I mean, it's basically an attachment to the 18th Airborne Corps. I think the 82nd Airborne has one company of MPs, and it would basically be used for POW and then base patrol and stuff like that. But you end up as an MP in this modern army, or whatever you want to call it. It's a lot of just almost the same as infantry, just a little bit different mission on securing buildings and things like and training and working with law enforcement. That's what we did in Iraq. But it's a mixed bag. Yeah. It's not usual to have an MP as a paratrooper. So it's a very small community there.
Oh, yeah, we have a whole unit.
Still airborne.
At Bragg, I think, what was it, 525th MI, and there's a whole, we have MPs too. I mean, look, everybody, I guess, needs them. When we were deployed, I'm pretty sure, I don't think our MPs came with us. I think Air Force Security Forces were managing the MP duties at our base. If I recall, we were at Taji in Baghdad, so I don't think our guys came, but I do think they came. I think they were assigned to somebody else in theater, like they deployed. I just don't think they were with us. Like they were assigned to probably train police, I would imagine, right? If you're not doing Force Pro or fucking base security, like internal security, I would imagine that's the only other thing to do there.
Yeah. Did you were MI?
No, I was infantry. I was in 2325 in the 82nd.
Yeah, if I had to do over again, I would have not done MP. But it's good skills. I didn't do law enforcement when I got out of the military or anything like that. But, yeah, I would have done something different, maybe intelligence or
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that
something
was
different.
my original plan was to do something like something in the '97 series, like human intelligence or something like that. But the more I looked into it, the more I was like, oh, this is super gay. Like they don't actually get to do any cool stuff. It's just like you just sit in unless you come in already with language skills for the most part, at least from the people that I knew that were in. It's like, yeah, you're probably going to get stuck as an analyst looking at stuff. I'm like, I don't want to do any of that shit. Like I have buddies. My buddy Matt was a THT for us, but he spoke flawless Arabic, right? Like right out of the gate, he spoke flawless Arabic. So obviously he was doing human intelligence collection and stuff like that. That would have been fun, but
Sure.
I don't know. I joined to go fuck shit up. So
Right.
right,
At the end of the day, you just want to be a warrior, and
yeah,
it's hard if you, I mean, if you have a mind that's curious, and I wanted to learn when I was younger, but yeah, maybe psychological operations. That's probably also would have been a letdown because I was at Bragg. I knew a lot of those guys too, but yeah, I mean, it's tough when you're young. You kind of you have ideas about what the military is going to be, and it's a lot of times something totally different.
yeah. Actually, I guess to back up, my first plan was to go 18 X-ray, right? And
Okay.
I was in that pipeline when I first went to Benning, and I was in Benning, and I start to, like the SF recruiters come by and start talking and stuff, and I'm like, this, like I'm in no way am I prepared for any of this right now, and I don't know, I don't know how much I like that direct pipeline to special forces because it's just like I think you need some practical experience first, to be honest. That's the way it usually was until we have like roster shortages. And usually when you make plans in times of chaos, that's not something you want to make the standard forever. You know what I mean? That's something you do now to get by. But
Right.
anyways, yeah, I just like halfway through basic, I'm like, no, I think I probably need to go to an airborne unit for a while. Because my dad was in the 101st back in the day. I was like, probably just go to an airborne unit for a while and do some war, and then see if I want to make a career out of this. Because training for 2 to 5 years to do a job that you end up doing for a year or two and then getting out seems stupid to me.
Yeah, if you're going to do 18 series, just stay to 20.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was thinking. I was like, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. And then luckily, I guess, well, not luckily, but it just kind of worked out that right around the time my contract was expiring, the war was coming to an end, really, in the way that we knew war to be. It was late 2010, and we got notice that our next two deployments were going to be to train like Iraqi police and then the Afghan army. I'm like, fuck that, I'm not doing that. It just didn't seem very interesting to me. But anyways, back to you. What unit were you in?
It was in a 108th MP company. Is airborne. Is it actually it was the only airborne air assault MP company in the Army. There was no double stack. That was the motto. But it's attached to the 503rd MP Battalion, so 18th Airborne Corps. I had friends over in the 82nd, but I never served under the 82nd.
Were you in charge of Bragg, or was that them? I don't
Yes, I
actually
work in the
remember.
road in Bragg.
Yeah, yeah. So is that what you did for the early part of your career? I imagine like when you become a cop, especially if you're like a sheriff's deputy or something like that, you either have to go to the jails and work 2 years, or you have to work patrol for a while before you can become a detective or go to, whatever you guys have CID, I guess. But what's that pipeline look like? Because I've never really been through any of that.
So I got to Bragg right after airborne school. I mean, I was fresh out of airborne school, got to Fort Bragg. I was standing in the office to go, be dispensed to my unit, and the colonel came in, the battalion commander, and he saw my name tag and he goes, "Afterburn, that's a hell of a name." And I said, "Thank you, sir." Wasn't going to correct him. And then one of the clerks said he wants to be deployed. Because I asked him, is there anybody deploying? Because I just wanted to just get overseas, do something. This is before 9/11, right before 9/11. And he said, well, send him. So they overrode. They gave me a slot into the 108th, and they were end up going to Kosovo. So I went to Kosovo right out of the gate. I mean, I didn't.
What was that,
I went to the field the
98 or
next
so?
day.
What year was that?
That was 2000.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay, so right before shit got kicked off.
Yeah, it was so 2000. Right. I mean, we had bombed Serbia for 78 days. I was the second rotation in. That was Mr. Clinton's war going into the 2000. And so when I made some impressions volunteering so quickly. That was first day in, wanted to go on a deployment. So when I got back, the colonel said, "Well, go lift." He found out I was a world champion power lifter. He's like, "Well, you can go train if you want to represent the unit." And so I ended up uh, going and requalifying, getting on the U.S. team. That's what I did. I was the colonel's driver up until 9/11. He retired. 9/11 kicked off, and then that same unit. So I only worked the road like one time, one or two times. I was mostly deployed overseas, and then 9/11 kicked off, and we were the first Army company on the ground in Kandahar, Afghanistan, following 9/11. So I was greeted and debriefed by General Mattis. I mean, that's who like just talking to us in a group, saying this is what's here. The Marines had taken the air base. It was still fresh. There was not a Burger King there.
Yeah.
It was still very much the Wild West, and we had to go and get maps of the AO. We make them ourselves, which I thought was, I mean, isn't this the most heavily mined country on planet Earth?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was nuts. That ended, and I knew we were going into Iraq because we were collecting. They were sending so much. All the resources were going into Kuwait, staging that, and so I got to do the tail end of the invasion of Iraq too. So my entire 5 years was pretty much deployed overseas or getting ready for a deployment.
What was Kosovo like? I've got some buddies. I think primarily so Air Force guys, JTACs, and Intel guys especially, and then a bunch of dudes from Third ID that were infantry guys that spent a lot of time. There's a bunch of 82nd guys were there too, but I never really linked up with any of them to discuss it. But I've heard some pretty interesting stories about it. What was it like for you guys over there?
It was an eye opener. I was a 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid, seeing the world that way. This is a pretty fresh off of, the NATO intervention there. And, we were,
and there's a full on like genocide going on there. It isn't like what the people, histrionics in the press saying the genocide, this genocide, that there was Slobodan Milosevic was a piece of shit, right? I mean, he was causing some problems over there.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. It's an interesting history. Kosovo to the Serbs is like what Jerusalem is to the Jews. And we basically took that away.
Right.
That was their province. And of course, you had the ethnic Albanians occupying there. That's where you get a lot of the genocide that happened. But it was really it's both sides. I mean, the Mujahideen was on the ground there. Osama bin Laden, supposedly, and we were funding that. I don't know if you knew that. That was some of the early interactions that we had with Al Qaeda. That was giving. We were funding that to take on the Serbs. So again, it's where everything kind of gets upside down. But yeah, that I got to see firsthand, and we were in charge of securing the border. But ironically, I've been so many years later, 25 years later, and I'm going, wow, we can't do that here in our own country. But I was tasked to do that as a young man. I found the most interesting part of it was working with the Russians. The Russian paratroopers came down. That was a real surprise. I don't know if you remember that, if you read about that. I mean, that was something that NATO didn't expect, and the Russians just rolled down. Yeah. And they were there to assist.
I've heard that. I never really dug into it too much. I know Russia, Finland had a bunch of people there, I believe. Air Force, or I'm sorry, paratroopers as well, like infantry dudes. Like I remember some of my Air Force friends telling me, like, there's a bunch of U.S. Army dudes cruising around, and they're all like normal height. Right, like 5'10" to somewhere between 5'8" and 6'2", right? And then you see these Nordic assholes come in, and they're all like 6'4", blonde hair, blue eyes. It's like, what the fuck's going on here, dude? You're not high, you're not fitting in anywhere, dude. This is not the place for you.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing. The Russians they ate all the Thanksgiving dinner before when I was on patrol, and I got back, and the Russians had just crashed the chow hall, and they had hookers, and I mean, literally, they had girls in uniform then they'd have the stripper shoes on, which was so funny. That was like their vacation, from Chechnya. I mean, they were rotating out. That was like their break, was to send the soldiers over to Kosovo. So I got to see a lot of it. Was I was thinking about that the other day. I was telling my son, he's 19. I was like, can you imagine, you leave high school and then the next step is you're rolling around in a foreign country with a belt-fed machine gun and a turret, listening to Dr. Dre. It's weird.
Yeah. And then so you deployed to Afghanistan, then Iraq. Was that the last one, the tail end of the invasion, or did you do more after that?
Iraq was the last one. It was 2003 into 2004.
And then what made you decide to get out?
Just had enough. It didn't seem like the trajectory. I mean, like you said, I was either going to stick it out and do 18 series. I'd gotten married too. My first wife was in the unit with me, and then she ended up staying back for instead of going into Iraq. I got her the DARE officer job. That's my son's mother. She was the DARE officer at Fort Bragg. So I'm glad I saved her from having to go to Iraq. But yeah, it was just three foreign wars. I thought that was an achievement, and I made it through. I lost some of my close friends, people, my best friends I was going to go into business with, and they had passed away. I just decided to get out.
And then what happened after that? Well, first before we talk about that, so you mentioned before you were on, I guess, a competition team to represent your unit. I don't think a lot of people outside the military know about this, but and it comes in phases. It's not always all available, but there's always a band, right? Every division has one, and the Army itself has one. There used to be like softball teams, not professional, but there would be traveling softball teams. I think less of that now, because there are people who, like with football at the NFL, for example, guys will go to one of the academies and they'll use them as they'll let them play in the NFL, like Villanueva back in the day. He was a Ranger, but he played offensive tackle for the Steelers. And they use them as the marketing device instead, right, as a recruitment tool. But powerlifting, I've never heard of that. I didn't know there was a powerlifting team. Like, who do you compete against?
Well, it's a really good question. There is not an official powerlifting team. I was given permission to represent my unit, and then I ended up winning the national championship in Chicago in June of 2001, and that made me the representative of the U.S. in the IPF World Championships, which was in Sofia, Bulgaria. My competition took place on 9/12/2001. I was in Sofia, Bulgaria for 9/11. So it was a crazy time. I mean, look back on it. I mean, I just already knew then, watching what was happening on television, I'm like, we're in a war, and I was the only military member there. So I represented the U.S., quasi representing the military, just basically my battalion commander giving me permission. I knew that at one time there was like military teams, and I think USA Powerlifting they had the military nationals, but it wasn't like sponsored by the military itself. And I ended up, I won that one too. I think that was March of 2001. So yeah, not an official team that I know of.
Mm-hmm. And what next? So you're out of the military now. You got, did you have a kid already, or was that after?
It was after. That's my son Houston. He was born in 2005. So I got out and I went from 99 to 2004, and then I got out and just started trying different things. Real estate company, I tried that. Just entrepreneurial minded. I haven't had a job since the Army. I've worked and a bit, had a lot less money than I do now at different times. Tried some stuff that worked, tried some things that didn't, and I've had convenience stores and restaurants, and I've been flat broke, and I brought myself back up. I mean, it's a story. I've worked my ass off since I left the military, but it's always good. I think it was a good start to my life. I think it just teaches you a lot. I wouldn't have the background and knowledge that I have now. I'm thankful for. I'm glad that I got out pretty much unscathed. I did see a lot, and it does change you. But I try to use that as a positive.
Yeah, I always tell people the same thing. In a different way, I guess, but it's like what I want is for men especially to refocus on purpose when they get out, or not even lose the focus. I mean, the goal would be to never lose focus of purpose, right? Like that whole, I guess, 6 months to a year when you're ending your contract and you're getting out, and you start doing things to get ready for that, applying for school or jobs or whatever it is. all the logistical stuff is good and necessary, but we don't do a whole lot on the forget. I don't know that we have a mental health problem. I think we might have a hardware problem with testosterone issues and our heads being banged up and shit like that. I think it's more that than actual mental health. Like mental health is schizophrenia to me, right? Like having high prolactin that's killing all of your testosterone, or your testosterone's cut off entirely, or you have head injuries that are causing chemical imbalances. That's a chemical situation. That's not a mental health situation, right? And the thing that irritates me so much about it is it is so goddamn easy to fix that, and not even expensive, right? I mean, if you're a mild case, you're looking at maybe $80 to $120 a month to fix that problem, right? To completely fix it, which it just drives me crazy. But anyways, what I tell people, back to it, in a perfect world, we never lose that focus. Unfortunately, we kind of took our eye off the ball to a little bit, or maybe we didn't. Maybe we just didn't know, right? Because nobody keeps records of this stuff historically for some reason. But when people are refocusing, finding their purpose again, I think that is a really important thing. And what I tell people that come out of the military, especially dudes, is that you've got this skill set now that nobody else has, right? Like going to college helps you learn some discipline about turning projects in on time, how to format large papers, shit like that, right? Be kind of responsible. It doesn't compare to being in the military and having a rigid physical and social structure like that, a command structure, and then being able to not by learning, or not by like education, but by experience, learning how to operate in chaos. You have a power that most people won't ever have in their entire lives, much less at 25 years old or however old you are. So your service isn't over, right? You're a leader in the community just by the function of having that power. Go do that, right? I mean, that's what you were built and trained to do as a man in general, but especially a man that's been through that shit. I feel like it's such a mistake. And I made it myself. I just wanted to fucking reset. I just was like, all right, I'm done with that. I'm not going to do that shit anymore. I just want to go relax for a while. Men are not made to relax. It doesn't work for us. We're like Australian shepherds. We just lose our fucking minds when we try to relax.
Well, there's again, it's the inertia of leaving. You got to really build on the momentum. Like, hey, I got out all this structure. I'm disciplined. I'm working with other men that are hard. That everybody's goal driven. You got to find that community and do things, and you got to be able to motivate yourself. But it's not about this. I think you have this in your mind. I can get my DD-214. I'm gonna get out, and then it's gonna be like the movie Platoon when the guy's like, you can make it through this, and the rest is just gravy. Well, it's not. The hard part. I mean, combat's easy. I mean, honestly,
you just show up and fight.
I mean, yeah. Well, okay. At the end of the day, you didn't die.
Mm-hmm.
Your friends are alive. Maybe you can sneak some whiskey back into the tent. I don't know, this whatever your thing is, and you survive another day. To me, there's a simplicity in that. I'm not saying that it doesn't have long-term effects, and that this isn't it's a dangerous thing, and sometimes a very awful thing. But when you get out in the real world, whatever this is, we have to make a living, support a family. It can be a very lonely thing. It can be soul crushing having to deal with people that, again, you talk about real snakes. I mean, there's some in the business world, finance, at least they had the decency to shoot at you.
Yeah, no shit.
Iraq, at least they, and again, I think just we put too much emphasis on, well, I went into combat, so now I'm damaged. You hear this a lot, and you see vets, and it really concerns me. It's like, well, if I'm not really screwed up, then I didn't serve. I think there's some mentality that we throw at that. And I would just encourage people, like, hey, shake it off. You just got to figure out how to get what's something that really lights your fire. What's something that gives you the motivation to get up in the morning and try and build. I know we ought to be teaching in the military, like as far as exiting, and it's like they ought to have some entrepreneurs come in and talk to these guys. It's not all that's my opinion. I think it ought to be exciting. It's not just getting out and relaxing. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. I mean, a good way to think of it is like, well, you can choose one of the two ways that you go through life. And I think this applies to everybody, not just people in the military or even people that have been through rough things. You're somebody who does things or somebody who things happen to. You can be one of those two people, right? And the person who things happen to, that is a catastrophizer. That's the histrionics, right? It's somebody that every new thing that comes up is a problem. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, I got to do this today, or I don't know what I'm gonna do, or whatever. It's like, shut the fuck up, dude. Seriously, like that's loser bullshit. I don't want to hear that. Um, uh, then there are people who do things right, and it isn't. It's there's not a huge divide between those two people. Really, it's just a matter of choosing which one you're going to be, right? Like you get, it's like putting on different pairs of sunglasses. You're going to filter this or that, right? And the person who does things instead of having things happen to them is the kind of person who's like, a new thing pops up and they're like, okay, how am I going to deal with this? Not how can I deal with this, but how am I going to deal with this? And that might seem like a subtle distinction, but it means all the difference in the world. And for somebody who's been through something that, you know, you could sit back and say it was traumatic or whatever and it affected me this way, or you can see it as a tool bag that you've now created that you can map on to any other thing that happens in your life, which is like, so now you're at this intersection where I have this new skill set and experience, right, that most people will never have. And then you need to look into your back pocket, like what kind of stuff what is it that excites me? What do I want to get involved in? Is it like, you know, policing for a lot of people, they do that. Community service in some regard. Is it entrepreneurship? Is it like counseling? What is it that gets you off? You know what I mean? What gets your dick hard, I guess. And find a way to map all those skills that you have that nobody else does, right, onto that. And now you're gonna win most of the time because nobody else can do what you can do, right? We don't do. There's nothing that happens, and I'm sure you, when you ETS back in the day, you experienced this as well. Nobody fucking tells you any of this. Nobody gives you any kind of philosophical guidance on how to become a normal human being again when you get out of the military. And it's a jarring experience because every hour of your day goes from being accounted for to, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I don't know what I'm going to do 10 minutes from now. You know what I mean? And that's a problem for people. For most people, they aren't intrinsically disciplined like that. They need the left and right boundaries to keep them in the lane. You know what I mean?
Well, and if you can find a mentor, that's a good thing. I didn't have one. I wish I could go back and talk to myself. I went to work immediately. My father has always been an entrepreneur and built businesses, and he put me in charge of an internet company he was heading up. And I was 24, so I just take this project, and I think it was back before fiber optics, and it was a line of sight company, and like it would do like high speed, and this was a pretty revolutionary thing. This is 2004. And so I get in there and I got maps out of the AO, and I'm like, we could put a repeater here, here, and here. We need to get contracts. And I'm just going out and like making it happen. Well, I pissed off all these boomers, like these people that were working there, and they all wanted to quit because I'm put in charge of it. They didn't want to work for me. They didn't want to work around me. And I was like upsetting the apple cart. I mean, they were just basically collecting a check, get a few accounts here. I didn't realize what was happening. I just thought, well, there's something wrong with me. Mm-hmm. No, it's just I brought those skills, and I didn't take enough. I didn't have the perspective of what was actually happening, which was, these guys never serve, didn't have any combat under their belt, didn't, lead men. It wasn't there, and I think there's some intimidation there, but it was a really unhealthy thing, and it was years until I figured out what the hell had happened. Dad just said, we're going to send you to the house, because I made everybody so mad by just grinding out and let's get this shit done. So, there's a good balance there. I think when you get out, it's like have some support. I know not everybody can do that, but seek out them. There's a lot of older guys that would have and gals too, that have your best interest at heart. If you say, hey, I'm starting out. Either it's career. I'm not saying everybody has to be an entrepreneur, but just having that support around you, especially when you get out of your unit and that's all you've known. I mean, it's funny. So much of the military stayed with me. My first wife was in my unit. My second wife, she was in my unit. She was a medic. And, I have friends that, still work with me and talk with me that were in the military. It really was life-changing. So there's so many good things that come out of that. But you do feel alone when you leave, especially getting out of a combat situation. And remember, post 9/11, that was a wild ride through history. I can look back on it now, study that era really heavily now from my radio shows and podcasts. But I lived through it, and you don't really take that into account. So don't be too hard on yourself if you're a young guy, or just even if you're separated from the military for 10 years or whatever. Just concentrate on what you can do. You have a skill set nobody else has. You're exactly right, and your nervous system is different. It's going to be different for the rest of your life. That's okay. Like I remember 24, I didn't like, what the hell's happening to me? Like you get that adrenal spike, because that's the thing about modern warfare is that there is no beach at Normandy. That used to be the thing about it was long moments of boredom followed by sheer terror. That's not really how modern combat is. It's just terror. You're never safe. There is no, like, Douglas MacArthur said that. He's like, there is no safety on this earth, only opportunity. Well, that's modern warfare because, they just bomb the chow hall. They'll hit you with an IED. There is no safety. You can't take an area. It doesn't work that way. And you're not taught that. So you're like always on. And so, yeah, we're a little different, but it's manageable, especially like you mentioned, nutrition is so important. I mean, you're probably vitamin B deficient. And that's another thing I stopped, when I got on really good nutrition and started watching that, like, the nervousness and the fight or flight, it's always going to be there, but you can suppress it and you can actually make it work in your advantage. You can work better longer, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I don't want it to go away. This is something that I struggled with in the early part of, I guess, remaking myself into a normal human being again. It's like, yeah, I could do all this stuff, and therapy, pills, whatever the fuck else. But I was very concerned about losing the edge because I don't think I don't want to lose that. I think it's like it's for a dude especially. It's such a huge benefit to be able to, without having to think about it. Whenever I'm in a public spot, I'm always aware of what's going on around me, right? I mean, that's a really useful thing. And like anything else, it can capture you. It can become your identity. It can, block out all the other information that's going on, or it can stop you from living, a useful and happy life, like anything else, right? You can become fixated on anything. But this one happens to be one where the upside is quite high. You know what I mean? Especially in the weird and dangerous times we live in these days. The upside of being more aware than everybody else around you is it's as high as an upside can get for something like that, right? So
I agree.
I think it's a huge mistake for people to try to jettison. Like I don't think you should always think of yourself as a soldier and nothing else, right? But take it up to the next level. Like, what does it mean to be a soldier? I'm willing to fight, courageous, selfless service, aware, skills, all this stuff, right? Those things don't only apply to a soldier. It can apply to many things. So how am I utilizing those skills and all the other things that I'm doing right now? Because you're going to be, hopefully most people aren't going to be in some kind of weird cataclysmic event or a mass shooter situation or anything like that, but you don't fucking know what's going to happen. You don't know, and it may not even involve you. It may be a car wreck on the freeway or something, and you're able to go help somebody, right? Like that stuff is super useful. Society needs that shit, and I'm not convinced that part of the cyclical nature of culture and war that we are going through this 200-year cycle or so isn't just part of the balance of nature. And us creating, strong and capable men, because hard times are coming, right? It just seems like kind of cultural scabbing, like we're scabbing up, or fascial tissue tearing and we're building new tissue or something like that. I think it feels to me like it is something like that, right? So instead of, again, thinking of it as something that's happening to you, think of it as being in the fucking gym, dude. Like, yeah, it's sore right now, but tomorrow I'm going to be, 1% stronger. So why are you bitching about it?
Well, right. And it's going to give you insight that other people don't have. Again, skills. I used to, when I turned 30, as I gotten divorced and I was just working on my next phase. It was a weird time and just trying to find my calling. I'd done a lot in my 20s, felt like it was just, I'd have been on high gear, and I go home at night, and I found on the Sci-Fi Channel they were running the repeat episodes of the Twilight Zone, and this is the 19, late 50s, early 60s Twilight Zone. I think they had 5 seasons, and I was like, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the period pieces, like where they have Serling out there smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
Anyway, I fell in love with it, and I started looking it up. And of course, Rod Serling was a paratrooper in World War II in the Pacific. And so he'd seen some horrendous shit, like he lived through a lot. And so that's where you get that morality tale, kind of the deep understanding of the human psyche that is Twilight Zone. That comes from his experience. Like that would never have been had he not served and made it through. So, you're not guaranteed to make it through everything that you do that it's hard. That's why it's risk. But you can use that to your advantage. You're not broken. Don't be a photo op for some. That's another thing. It's like, I just see all these vets. They're like photo ops for, you see these guys that didn't go anywhere. They're already like, they're the city councilman or the state legislator. And they're like, we're going to build a home for this veteran. I'm like, that's great and all, but I don't know, man. We have skills and we should be outworking these guys, the fraternity guys. I'm nothing wrong with the fraternity, but you know what I mean? Like we volunteered to this. This is the two longest wars in American history. And I'm skeptical of the folks that that again they rally around the flag and do all this stuff and tell us that we're going to go to war, but that's a lot of what makes up our politicians these days. They avoided it, but they support more of them. So again, we don't have to get down that road, but I do think that we ought to be proud of those who served, of it. But it's not the end. It doesn't define you. It's just a piece of you. Just like going to the gym, you're exactly right. You get stronger, and get better, and you have insight, like I was mentioning with Serling, that other people don't have.
Right. Yeah. And then some of the, if you look back through history, some of the people we know most, not because of their experience in combat, but that experience made them who they are, right? Like JFK, for example. People think of him as just a president. He tried to stop the Vietnam War from happening because he was in fucking war. In a real way, he was in war, right? He was essentially what would be a swift boat captain in Vietnam, right? But in World War II, yeah, P2 captain. Yeah, I don't think people know what a PT captain is. So I think people remember swift boat. I'm trying to
very close.
Yeah. So he did war. Hemingway went out and did war, right? Theodore Roosevelt went out and did war. And, these people that get in, there's quite a few people that get involved in politics or let's call it the information or entertainment businesses who experience that, and they come back with their perspective that I think is really important. And maybe it doesn't come up in your cubicle. You know what I mean? It's possible. I just don't like this idea of thinking you're a victim or thinking that you're somebody that things have happened to. It's not how it is. Like I like what you said about don't be somebody's photo op, because you're a fucking warrior. Why are you waiting for somebody else to come do something? Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think this is a big problem with men and women right now too. There's a breakdown in the way that men and women communicate with one another and the value system. I don't mean ethics and morals. I mean, it used to be simple. Men provided and protected, and that was a value proposition to women. And they would latch on, not in a negative way, but they would latch on and then provide value in the form of support, children, all kinds of other stuff, right? Being a good friend, a partner to them, all this stuff. That's how it worked. It was very simple, right? I mean, romance and emotions are very complicated, but the structure of it was very simple. Now it's not so simple, right? Because from a very young age, women are taught now that they need to be independent, right? Fair enough. Do what you want. This is America. You can do whatever the fuck you want. Nobody's going to stop you. I'm not sure that it's great for men or women that that's the case anymore. I'm certain, however, that the value proposition between men and women is now completely fucked. Nobody knows what to, ask 100 people in their early 20s, what are you looking for in a partner? They're like, what do you mean looking for? You know what I mean? They have no idea what they're like. Hot girl might be an answer, right? Or something like that. But it's going to be very shallow. It's not going to be like, I'm looking for somebody that's going to raise some badass kids for me, right, and take care of my house. Or for a woman, I'm looking for a man who's going to lead this household. Now, this whole structure is broken down for a variety of different reasons, but the new era of men, guys in their 20s and 30s right now, there's this there's this black pill Sigma male movement where they're just taking their ball and going home. Oh, women are bullshit, man. I'm not even gonna participate. Well, you're a fucking pussy. You know what I mean? That's the biggest loser bullshit I've ever heard in my life. Why are you waiting around to be led? You're a fucking man. Why are you waiting around to be led? Our entire society, for all of human history, has been predicated on men leading because of our physical power for the most part, right? Our ability to endure things. And then because of the physical power over the last, let's say, 35,000 years of rudimentary to now advanced civilization, we've been in those roles, right? So we're suited to that. That's how evolution works. Like you get suited to things over time. You're quite literally built to do this. But instead, when you take that pill and see yourself as a victim of circumstance, then you just turn into a little bitch. I mean, and it's so the thing that irritates me the most about it is that it's so avoidable. Like, you don't have to go down that road. It is a choice you make.
I agree with that. I mean, this is in large part an outcropping of what I believe is a massive spiritual and psychological operation that kind of intertwined, that are triangulated towards the West. I mean, the West is dying because we're losing the structure of the family and traditional gender roles. None of this is an accident, by the way. I mean, this is an attack. I mean, so I think that's been triangulated. You can go back to the 1930s, and there's the origin of the Frankfurt School, you know, the intellectuals that were kicked out of Nazi Germany and came here and set up. You can look at Pat Buchanan's book, The Death of the West, and it details a lot of these were they said, well, you know, Marxism truly didn't work in the Soviet Union. We have communism, but the people didn't really accept it. I mean, they're under the yoke and the totalitarian, they will obey, but it's not in their hearts. Like, we got to start with the students. So that's where you get the Cultural Revolution of the 1960s. These are the Marxian fellow travelers and stuff that set a tone here in this country. But I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm fascinated by, like, you get these guys, and it's all these gym guys, you know, they're always like really sad. You know, there's sad guys that are always in the gym, you know, training and stuff. And I own a gym, and that's it's been a huge part of my life. And I don't even know what's going on, you know, but yeah, you see it is, what is it? The statistics are like 80% of the women date 20% of the men.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So there's this giant chunk of guys that just there's no future there. Like, they don't see it. It's the way our culture works, because it's like training the women. You know, and I have a son now, he's 19. I don't really know as far as giving him advice, but I would definitely like seek a traditional woman. Seek a woman that she has to know what she wants, and you guys got to have, you know, go back to that. That's the new punk rock, right? That's the new, like, to step out of the culture, because the culture is garbage.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just like the hookup culture, and let's go from, you know, partner to partner and all that. That is death. I mean, it really is. You know, and it's sad, because even, like, I know a lot of guys. I mean, most young men I know, like, want to start a family, like, they want to do that, but it's like, well, where do I go? I mean, because the woman will have, you know, 100 guys in her inbox and her DMs, you know, she's like, I got options, all these options. And it's, you know, it's something that's, because of the rise of social media and our culture and everything else, you have to seek out, you got to stop looking in the same place. You're not gonna get a trust fund girl or some spoiled brat with, you know, 30 guys in her text, you know, to become a traditional woman. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah,
you're gonna have to go find one.
For sure.
So instead of giving up, they're not gonna come to you. You're exactly right. I mean, start figuring, like, what did Babyface Nelson, you know, when they back in the 30s, he robbed banks. He said, why do you rob banks? He said, that's where the money is.
Yeah.
So stop going where, you know, there's no profit.
Sure.
You know, stop trying to. I don't agree with. There's a lot of the red pill masculinity stuff too. It's like, you can date beautiful women. I'm like, what's the goal in that? Like, do you want one? You know, are you trying to be a player? Do you want a boat full of? That just looks. It looks like a huge waste of money to me. Rather buy a homestead. I'd
Mm.
rather have businesses. I don't know. I'm with you. I think we probably agree there. It's deep within the culture and it's rotting. So, turn that off and go do something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly don't try to find your fresh water in a sewer, right? I mean, that's kind of extreme because there's good people that are immersed in this culture as well because they don't know that there's other options out there. I mean, the latchkey kid thing kind of fucked us all up a little bit. I think this bait like all of Western culture, not Western, I mean, a lot of American culture specifically became based on productivity at some point in like the 1980s, and I don't really understand why. I think it may have just been a psyop to get us to sign on to these draconian like 30-year mortgages for. It used to be the case that like back in the 1950s, you would spend 2 times your annual salary on a home. Then 60s, 70s, and 80s, I think it was about 3x. That would be a good marker. Now it's like 10x, right?
Right.
You're basically, even though you technically own that house, you're renting it from the bank for 30 years, right?
Sure.
And I think we fell into some kind of trap here because it is true that the vast majority of the wealth that the middle class makes is in the equity in their home. There's no question about that, right? But that market is easily manipulated, right, as we've seen in multiple times over the last 30 years. In addition to that, we created a scenario where it is very unlikely for most people to live anywhere near a major city to have a single income household. Like it has become prohibitive to have a single income household. And not just because of the mortgage costs and rates and things like that, but healthcare as well, right? I mean, I know throughout the 2000s, I knew a lot of people, a lot of women who were married to my buddies. They worked a job just so they could afford childcare and health insurance for themselves because their husband's employer didn't offer it or they didn't have health care at all, right? So we've created all these ancillary costs just to stay alive, where it has become prohibitive for a woman to stay home and take care of children, right? Like, and that isn't to say that you have to. If you're a human being, do whatever the fuck you want, right? But let's not mistake who we are evolutionarily as creatures, right? Like men are going to be most satisfied, most happy and content when they are providing for and protecting their family, right? When they're guiding people, that's because that's what we're built to do. Just like a dog going to like fetch birds or some shit like that. It's like that's what you're built to do. Women are going to be most happy and content if they're well adjusted when they're not just being a mother, but being an empathetic creature to those around them, taking care of whether it's their family or strangers, maybe if they're a counselor or something like that. There's a lot of ways to scratch that particular itch. But this idea that I think it like communism has been disproven now. That the Murphy Brown idea that you can be a single mom, independent career lady, you're going to be happy. No, you end up childless with cats. You know what I mean? Like honestly, and it's not an insult. It's a fucking warning. Don't stop doing this. This is not how we were meant to operate. And then on the other side of that, on the practical side of it, if you look at the difference between how we're doing things now, it's not a moral issue. It's not about religion. It's not about patriarchy. It's not about any of that bullshit. Look at the practical effects now, right? With the dissolution of the nuclear family. Everything is getting fucked up now because of that, because there is no stability. If you read anything about property rights and economics, right, from like, let's say the 17th century to present, one of the themes you're always going to hear is that safety and security matter, right? For people to be willing to start new businesses or invest in property and homes or invest in other ways in the community, they have to know that community is going to be there a couple years from now, right? And that is at the macro level. On the micro level, people feel the same things, the same way about their family, right? This divorce jettison culture that we have now, who's going to really put in 100% if they think, well, it's just going to end in 5 years, right? It's just like we have to get back to having non-negotiables that promote the things that actually work. You know what I mean? Like it's not about the biblical definition of marriage. I don't give a fuck about that. Just look at the results from the 1980s or the 70s versus today. They're wildly different. And the only thing that's changed because the economies go up and down, wars happen. Sometimes there's, disasters of some sort or another. The Overton window moves from here to there. But the main thing that's changed over the last 40 years is that families aren't together anymore, right? And for the first time in human history, we now have a situation where the number one predictor of crime isn't poverty, it's fatherless homes, right? There's so many practical examples of how we have fucked this up. All you have to do, and not to be reductive or anything, because it's not that simple, but really what you need to do is just take it back to do the fundamentals correct again. If you're an athlete and your form's fucked up and you hurt yourself, you heal up and then you work on your form again with lighter weight. If you're a hitter and your swing gets fucked up, you don't go do a home run derby, right? You don't go play a different sport. You break your swing down to smaller segments, get each part right, and then put it back together again. We get back to fundamentals, and we're having a real hard time with this right now, just realizing that that's what we need to do.
I agree totally, and I think that the reason you talk about the go-go 80s, Wall Street, Gordon Gekko type, this is when we started the Reaganomics with Art Laffer, the economist, who had the Laffer curve about deficit spending, that really create the fiat currency. This is my wheelhouse because this is what I do with gold and silver and precious metals. And I really think that it's an extension of fake. We went off the gold standard August 15th, 1971. Gold was $35 an ounce. Richard Nixon closed the gold window because we couldn't pay our bills. The world was cashing in their American dollars for gold as we had promised, and we couldn't pay them. And so they're free floating currency. So now we're in a live. This is an experiment, by the way. We're in a live experiment. Fiat currencies, generally, fiat means by decree. Currencies backed by nothing. The average lifespan is 26 years. So we've doubled that. But we're now the world's oldest living fiat currency. And so when you have a fiat currency, it starts out with there's a little bit of fiscal discipline. I think when I was born, the debt of the United States was $1 trillion. So the end of 1979, coming up before Reagan, was $1 trillion. Now we go $1 trillion in debt every 90 days.
Yeah.
So the wheels are off, and I think this is an extension. It's fake, and it bleeds into all of our culture. So you're talking about the price of a home. Well, it's not that homes are more valuable. It's just your currency's less valuable. And by the way, it's like gold was $35 an ounce since 1971. It's close to $800 an ounce by the end of the 70s, and then it cooled off through the 80s and 90s. We were doing a lot of spending, and the markets were booming, and so people were out of precious metals. But you start to see the value wane, and so now gold is over $2,400 an ounce. But gold didn't go up. Gold's not up in value. It's the same value that it was 100 years ago.
Sure.
What you're watching the death of a currency. So this really bleeds into every aspect of our lives. It bleeds into being an entrepreneur. Like you're working harder and harder with all the regulation and taxes to keep up to make more dollars, but the dollars are worth less. So you have to constantly be playing that game. It's the same thing, used to. That's why you could have the man goes to work, because we used to make things. We used to be the manufacturing marvel of mankind, and then we introduced free trade policies and gutted the U.S. manufacturing and shipped it overseas. And that was by design. I mean, we basically hollowing out America and pawning it off. And so the man who used to be able to work and have a living wage job, and the woman stayed at home and you could afford a home. People talk now too. It's the same thing that people say, well, the minimum wage needs to be increased. Well, maybe so, but if you go back to 1962, 63. It's $1.25 an hour. Well, that's 5 silver quarters. That's $30 today. So I just try to give people some perspective. It's look into the currency, look into the money. Like know the difference between currency and money. That's
Sure.
a good start. Because we're all chasing. We all have to provide. Especially if you're a man. That should be built into you. Like provide, make things better. It doesn't mean you have to have multiple businesses or anything. You could just be great at what you do. But that's our job. Well, just know that the knowledge, I think, of that is powerful in an era when you're just being fed so much BS.
Sure.
Whether it's politics, because I can promise you, I don't care what side of the aisle you're, whatever you're doing in politics today, neither one of these people are talking about the real. I mean, we're in a fiscal nightmare, unfunded liabilities and the quadrillions.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, man.
Yeah.
So
we're coming up on a big problem right now. The kind that I mentioned this from time to time on the show, but the kind that Diocletian saw when he was emperor of Rome, where it was different back then because they did use a standard coin, right? But what they did was they recalled all the coinage, melted it down, made it iron, and then put a little bit of gold or a little bit of silver in it, right? It's difficult to do that. So it was something of an impediment. You could only do it every 10 or 15 or 20 years, right? But now you just like add a zero on a fucking spreadsheet somewhere, and all of a sudden there's magically more currency. It's like, well, that's not really how that works, right? What you've done is divided everything in value by 2 or 10 or whatever it happens to be. But I don't think the average, like, I know a lot of people are concerned about the debt. They're concerned about our spending deficits. They're concerned about inflation, obviously, because it's 2 to 3 times more for groceries than it was a couple years ago. But I don't think people understand finance or currency in any real way. Like if you say the phrase time value of money to someone, I guarantee you they don't know what you're talking about. But that is one of the most fundamental. If you're a human being with money, that's of all the other shit you understand, you should definitely understand that. You know what I mean? Like if you can take a dollar you have today, which by the way is worth 97 cents, best case scenario next year, and you can buy something that's going to appreciate right now with that money instead of keeping it in the bank or whatever you're going to do with it, then you've made an investment in your life. Instead of a dollar is a depreciable asset. Money is a depreciable asset. It's like, I don't know how that doesn't register with people. I know that we don't do a whole lot of schooling on this.
No, on purpose.
And like high school, yeah, it's definitely on purpose. But money is if you've got like a big savings account, or you've got cash in a fucking safe somewhere, have some cash in a safe somewhere because it's a smart idea. Have some gold and silver in a safe somewhere. But if you're like hoarding cash somewhere, that's retarded. Like you're fucking wasting your time.
The
dude.
rich don't do
like
that.
At the least, you're losing 3% a year on your investment. That is unsustainable, right?
Mattress. Nobody dives to the bottom of the ocean to get a bag of cash.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy, right?
So they're looking for the pirate gold, looking for the silver.
But nobody, like the average person in America has no idea what time value of money even means, right? It's just a simple formula. You don't even need to know the formula. You just need to know what it means to know that every dollar that comes, like these people that were buying Bitcoin with every paycheck they got, fucking smart. It was an appreciable asset. You can make fun of cryptocurrency all you want, and it's going to evolve in the way that it does, and we don't have that much control over it. I think markets just do weird shit sometimes, and there's some nefarious actors out there to push them in different directions. But the point of it is, we have we are so financially illiterate at this point that the government can just keep doing what they want. If people just really understood the fundamentals of what was going on, they would say no to this immediately. Nobody would ever get elected again. They would stop paying their taxes, or something would happen if they just really understood how fucking close to the edge we are right now.
Henry Ford said that. He said, if the American people knew about the banking system, there'd be a revolution in the morning. They just don't understand it because it makes it look like these are financial wizards. You got Jerome Powell, head of the Federal Reserve. They're like, what is he going to do? Well, he's either going to print more or not, okay? It's not a genius thing. And by the way, the Federal Reserve Bank, which is not federal and not a reserve, you have no control over that. You don't own it. The American people don't own it. It's owned by a foreign cartel, a banking consortium. But, again, they lost money, $989 billion. How do you lose money when you make the money? So that they're not the world's smartest people, and just because it looks complicated, they put all these stats and stuff and figures on a screen. It's not complicated. They have a printing press. It's all fake, and they're buying assets with it, and they expect you to hoard cash. That's why you have in the United States, they have the program from the Ad Council called "Feed the Pig," right? You feed the pig. Put your dollars in a piggy bank. No, you need to put them in something that's finite. Put them in something that's an asset. And I'm not, it's not an infomercial on precious metals. It could be land, it could be Bitcoin. I'm going to the Bitcoin conference here in Nashville as soon as we're done with the podcast. I'll be there for a few days, and Trump's supposed to speak. And
I think Harris is supposed to speak as well, actually. I think I heard she was going to be there.
Who is?
Kamala Harris. I believe she's showing up as well. I don't know what she's going to say. I don't know what she's going to say. It's like Bitcoin is a coin that's a bit.
I haven't heard this. Am I out of the loop?
I'm pretty sure. Let me look that up right quick.
That would surprise me because the the Biden administration has been completely, along with Elizabeth Warren, been very anti-crypto.
I'm pretty sure. Oh no, she's not. She's not speaking. She's not speaking. She said she might go and then retracted. I think that was her handler, just being like, "Nah, let's not enter you in a spelling bee or anything."
Right. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if their job gets any easier from Joe to Kamala Harris, but
Yeah.
yeah, Trump's supposed to talk about making it a reserve asset again. It doesn't really matter what the politicians do if you understand where the world is moving and like the reset. You know that because they're telegraphing and telling you like we're going to have a great reset. We're going to have a great reset. What does that mean? Well, it means there's going to be a currency revaluation of all currencies, revaluation of commodities. A lot of it's been manipulated over the years. So again, I think there's a lot of opportunity in all of this too. Like, because we're seeing a shakeup in the culture, seeing a shakeup in finances. So I think, try to look at it as what's the Chinese symbol for crisis and opportunity? It's just inverse.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's how markets work, right? I mean, that's why shorting works. That's why, buy low, sell high. What's your recommendation for people? We got to get out of here soon. But what's your recommendation for people? Because it does seem like we're about to fall off the edge of the world here, but things are never as bad or as good as they seem, right? I mean, there's so much infrastructure in the West these days that we're going to have some currency problems and something will replace it at some point, right? But whatever replaces it, and however long that takes, real property, things that appreciate in value over time, finite things, whatever they happen to be,
Yes.
are safe bets typically. So what's your recommendation or what's your advice to people out there these days?
Well, know the difference between currency and money. Start there. They can be the same thing if they have intrinsic value. So I think of precious metals, gold and silver are money. They have been since all of recorded history. So if you can start looking at ways for you to trade in some of your fiat currency for real money, then start doing that. It could be Bitcoin. Bitcoin is finite. There's only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be in the system. You can't make new Bitcoin. The dollar supply is unlimited. Current fiat currency is unlimited all around the world. So you want to transition out of out of the central banking system and to be your own bank. This is my recommendation. It's not even like telling you to invest. I don't use that word anywhere on my website. I don't give investment advice. I give protection advice. You want to, money is stored energy. It's a representation of your energy and your work. So you should have precious metals, I believe. I think you should look at things like Bitcoin because it's the new age. You're right about the dollar being replaced. It's not going to zero. It's going to digital. They're going to do the central bank digital currency. The World Economic Forum just put out, they were happy. 90% or 97% of countries around the world are adopting a central bank digital currency. That's a hellish system. So you have to resist that by being outside of it. Parallel systems. But I mean, one of the best investments you can possibly make is in yourself. By getting books and going to seminars and listening to podcasts and starting your own business, or applying for that job that you want. Taking some risk. That's the best investment I think you can make. And if you're going to be making anything, then save things that are finite. Do not save things that are unlimited.
Yeah. To your point about investing in yourself and storing energy. Understand what labor is, right? I mean, it used to be the idea that man was going to extract something out of the earth and transform it somehow and then give it to other people who need that transformed product, right? That was the general idea behind property rights. Like that's what, like the ultimate property right is your body, your self determination, your autonomy, and you use that plus energy to make something out of nature, and you give it to, or you trade it to other people for whatever you need, right? That is what it is at its base level, right? So, there's a lot of doomsday people out there that think shit's gonna not be great. If there's a central bank digital currency in America, that's not gonna be great because you think they're flipping switches now. Just wait until it's complete control without any kind of parallel economy. Just the only way to make yourself resilient against this is to be able to operate independently of the currency that's going on. That's really the only way to do it. So, Look, I appreciate you coming today. It's a really interesting conversation. Tell everybody where they can find you, all your shows and everything, websites and
Sure.
stuff.
On my personal website, it's arterburn.news. That's my last name, .news. And I have a gold and silver company. But most importantly, I mean, for regular people, I set up a monthly subscription service called Wolfpack. You go to wolfpack.gold. Go check that out because it starts as low as $50 a month. A lot of people, we did the inverse. A lot of these, big companies, they don't care if you have $5,000 or $10,000. They want you to have, they don't even, $500, they certainly won't talk to you. They don't care. But I care, and I made it $50 as the starting level. As the Lone Wolf package goes all the way up to 5,000. You can make one-time purchases, but we source your metals for you. I put together a detailed invoice, and the more people that join, better prices I can get for everybody. I think we got close to 1,200 members all over the U.S., and I got like 800 5-star reviews. So if you're looking to, again, we had this conversation. If you're looking to take some of that fiat currency and fake money and turn it into real money, go to wolfpack.gold and promo code 1776.
There you
for
go.
Free constitutional silver.
There you go.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Anytime. I appreciate the conversation. I mean, honestly, would love for people to go watch your programming and learn more about this. It is having enough people that understand how finance and currency actually work it might be the only thing that saves us from whatever's coming, to be honest. Because it's one thing to build a parallel economy. It's another thing to have enough participation to sustain it. You know what I mean? So if you're out there listening, make sure you go check out the show. Again, thanks for coming today. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. And thank you all for listening. This has been City.